I want to talk a lot about the things that that you have been speaking about hijacking electricity, and so I have a presentation, and I'm going to just share my screen and basically, really explain to people that this isn't some hoax, that this microchip technology exists, and that we need to understand some mechanisms of injury. I myself have been a targeted individual. I almost lost my life when I was targeted. And so I learned about it from a very personal perspective. And the mechanisms of injuries are manifold, because what is happening is that there's an oxidative stress with free radicals and accelerated aging that is happening to all who have nanotechnology in their body. There are people who are being targeted and tortured, but there are others who are affected in a way that is so insidious, and it is leading to disease, anxiety, depression, even suicides. There can be directed energy weapons induced, and so this has microwave injury regarded to it. Extremely low frequencies being used, and we've documented that in the blood. I'll show more about this. Electromagnetic frequency, which can also be harmful, and therefore there's DNA damage. There's physical torture. I've had patients, and I've witnessed physical torture. People who are being attacked by these microwave weapons, and the radio frequency meters just go off the charts. They have extreme headaches. Their genitalia, for example, are affected, or they have extreme headaches to where they're falling over to the side, can no longer walk in a straight line, have Havana symptoms. And many people have died because they were literally tortured to death. And this is happening to civilians. And we must understand that now, in regards to the social credit system and the digital ID and identification under the skin, this is the technology for an absolute Orwellian slave state. I want to explain to people that this is not a new phenomenon. Dr. Hildegard Staniger was a toxicologist who had documented microchip implants in targeted individuals as early as 2012. In this particular study, there was an individual, a 57-year-old woman, who had felt burning glass needles entering her left ear, and subsequently, weeks later, continued to have pain and headaches. And she was diagnosed with a meningioma. And what happened was that she had it surgically removed, and these were advanced nanomaterials that were tested, and an ear canal specimen showed microchips. And the reason why this is very important is because it gives me clues from my research about what is happening now with the shots. There were other aspects to it. This individual had many metals associated in their body, strontium, arsenic, for example, and it's known that these crystals that are nano antennas are using metals to be able to be targeted via frequencies. And it was also found that there were metabolites of styrene. Styrenes are plastics similar to polystyrene that is used now. There's other things like polyurethane and polyamides. The reason why I'm interested in polyamides is because the rubbery clots that we found in the vaccinated individual and we're now finding in the unvaxxed were made from polyamides. So this is nylon or silk-like material like biosteel, which is a genetically engineered protein from spider silk. So this is utilized to monitor DNA as a biosensor, and these structures form crystals, and they are working together with the metals for multiple applications. This research was done by the Department of Defense, and it is part of the CNS Biosensory Research application that were granted to U.S. Nanocorp at the University of Connecticut. And under these military applications, there have been projects that deal with these chip-like aspects, and there were programs in the 1990s associated with the Naval Air Warfare Center in China Lake. This is part of the ear canal specimen. Graphite was also found. So graphite is a sister to graphene oxide. Other aspects of these biosensor messages were silicon, sulfur, and an amide polymer that appeared to be an animal-like protein. Here is this meningioma. They could not cut it with a diamond, except with a diamond saw. It wasn't a meningioma. It was a hydroxyapatite and a protein polymer that was actually constructed to build a microchip, a brain chip. So in this publication, this nanomachine for ultimate control of false memories is really discussed how these nanotubes, nanospaces, nanorods, and nanowires are the single components that are made to make a nanoradio, and it is under the cover of nanomedicine. Oftentimes these people, the target individuals, are being implanted with microchips during medical procedures or through vaccinations, as we've now shown with the COVID-19 shots. I've shown similar crystalline structures even in insulin. So mesogens are liquid crystals that can perform smart functions for smart cities, but they're used as the platform, as a thin film, which is used as a brain chip biosensor. And what do these biosensors do? Number one, they control and monitor the brain and the body function. Absolute control and surveillance of all EEG functionality. Control and monitoring of behavior. Behavior can be remotely modified. Sending and receiving of verbal commands. This is V2K. I've experienced it. It's real. Stimulation of bioelectrical transmission within the neuron trees of the nerves that can rewire your brain via reading and writing, as well as this is used for listening devices, remote sensing, monitoring, surveillance. They can see out of the eye of the targeted individual and have full spectrum camera. This is also used as a digital computer component, and the interbody area network, which hijacks the electricity from our human body to power itself, requires something like a cell phone, and then it transmits. The data is transmitted to the satellite, but it's bidirectional telemetry, and it's used for dual use applications in the military. This is what we found in human blood, in vaccinated and unvaccinated blood. Clifford Conacher and I did near-infrared spectroscopy, and we found the signatures of polyamides, amide proteins, silicone, and sulfur. This is exactly what was used as chemical components of the brain chip mesogens as well. These are two pictures side by side. One is the graphite implanted microchips by Dr. Hildy Staninger in 2011. And on the other side, you see Dr. David Nixon's dark field microscopy work from the Pfizer vial, developing microchips with these optical communication cables. Here are further images of these microchips. We have worked with nanotechnology engineers and electrical engineers that have absolutely confirmed these are computer chips. They are emitting MAC addresses. And for example, one slide with a drop of Pfizer vial emitted up to 72 roaming MAC addresses in a test done by Dr. David Nixon. This is my research in regards to the blood of the unvaccinated. This technology now sheds, and what you see here are quantum dot-like micro-robotic biosensors that are sending your information to the cloud. They're also hijacking the electricity from the blood, which is leading and working together to create these clumping rubbery clots. Nothing in the body is supposed to blink: orange, green, yellow, red. This can also modify humans' DNAs. And quantum dots are a ticking time bomb. They are extremely toxic. They have metals in them, for example, cadmium, and it's been shown that they cause death in animal studies, especially with the repeated application. And we know that these quantum dot and micro robots are now in the food supply. They are used as nanosensors, as smart dust everywhere. This is a very important research project. Clifford Carnicum and I, we did a type of spectroscopy that looked at the sensitivity of the blood when stimulated with certain frequencies. We went from 0 hertz to 25,000 hertz, and we found that there's a difference between vaccinated and unvaccinated blood. The vaccinated blood via C19 bioweapon is extremely sensitive to 4 hertz, extremely low frequency radiation. 4 hertz is the delta brainwave activity of the subconscious mind, and 4 hertz is used by HAARP, High Active Auroral Research Project. This is something that's creating an ambient field around the world, and it's used to ionize our biosphere and ionosphere for weather warfare, but it's also been used for mind control. What can these extremely low frequencies do? They can control mental functioning. They can disrupt your cellular metabolism. They can suppress the immune system. They can genetically modify humans. They can influence free radical formation, meaning causing inflammation and accelerated aging. There's also a phenomenon of cyclotonic resonance. Dr. Nick Bedjic clearly discussed that HAARP is used as a mind control tool. And one of our next speakers, Dr. Len Baer, had a functional MRI done. He's both vaccinated and a targeted individuals, and it has shown persistent 4 hertz brain frequency waves in the waking state. Remember that usually you have these types of brain waves when you're asleep, when you're in a deep restful REM sleep. So this has already confirmed some of our research finding here with the blood. Igor Smirnov was a Russian mind control research individual, and he was hired by the FBI in 1993, and he said this: it is conceivable that some Russian Satan, or let's say Iranian or any other Satan, as long as he owns the appropriate means and finances, can inject himself and intrude into every conceivable computer network, into every conceivable radio or television broadcast without relative technological ether and without disconnecting cables. You can intercept the radio waves in the ether and then subliminally modulate every conceivable suggestion into it. If it transpires over a long enough period of time, it accumulates in the heads of people. It eventually can be artificially manipulated with other additional measurements to do that which the perpetrator wants them to do. This is why this technology is rightfully feared. And what is important is that Ted Gunderson, for example, the former FBI chief, has testified that satanic cults are involved in this stalking and targeting. The military has studied the damage that they can do via microwave weapons to the brain. And what has been shown in collaboration with Texas A&M University and the U.S. Army Research Laboratory is that pulsed microwaves can induce significant stresses that may be implicated in this neuropathology that these people are experiencing. So, for example, it is accepted that a perceived sound that is due to the cochlea, the inner ear, detecting stress waves can result from a rapid temperature rise within the head due to pulsed microwaves. So this is exactly what Richard Lighthouse was talking about. And it turns out that applying the minutest, smallest temperature increase in the brain, less than 0.005 degrees Celsius in a very short amount of time, can create injurious stress waves in the brain and brain edema. So what are some of the things that people can do? It turns out activated charcoal has been used for traumatic brain injury, and traumatic brain injury is exactly what the microwave energy is inducing. So that's been helpful. The other thing is that EDTA, which I also use for detoxification of the C19 bioweapon that's now shedding to people, EDTA pulls out metals, so it's helpful in getting this antenna out. But but it also has been used for neurotoxicity and EMS radiation poisoning of the brain. So when I was affected by Havana symptoms, I used EDTA infusions, methylene blue infusions, was able to get very quick recovery. This methylene blue is an ultraviolet blue dye that has remarkable regenerative abilities for the brain, for traumatic brain injury, also global ischemia. They did studies on mice where they gave them a cardiac arrest. They were dead for 30 minutes and resuscitated them. And the mice that had methylene blue injected in them had no brain damage. It increases the oxygen delivery to tissues between 30 to 70%. Hence, it downregulates oxidative stress and inflammation. It is over the counter, it's easily used, and it can be used for cognitive dysfunction conditions like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, but also specifically TBI, Havana syndrome, brain fog. It's also been very useful to dissolve the plastics, which are these polyamide proteins that we found in the blood. Helpful brain peptides have recently been attacked by the FDA, the most evil organization in the United States, in my mind, who has killed millions of people. But these brain peptides can still be available on certain websites, for example, and there's research peptides that are available. Dihexa was the miracle drug of neurology that is 10 million times more potent than brain-derived nerve growth factor, and you can regrow neurons and you can heal an injured brain. I've done this for stroke rehabilitation and cognitive age reversal. C-Lank is a peptide that inhibits fear, aggression, stress, which a lot of these people are extremely stressed, while enhancing neurogenesis, meaning it grows new connection. You can find this as a nasal spray, has no side effect, and is over the counter. Deep delta sleep-inducing peptide is a peptide that repairs the brain, even from something like chemo brain. And chemo brain, meaning the toxicity from chemotherapy, is equal or similar to the microwave radiation injury. GHK copper peptide also increases neuronal gene transcription. It's a regenerative peptide, resets 30% of the human genes back to health. In the neurons, the gene transcription is increased between 500 and 800%. And then lastly, BPC 157, called the Wolverine peptide, also available over the counter, can be used for traumatic brain injury. And it's been specifically shown that intraventricular hemorrhage, brain edema, was much lessened when using BPC 157, which is a peptide isolated from the gastric juices of humans. It was very important that I've learned through my own targeting experiences is that we are surrounded by weapons system. And I wrote this article, it's on my Substack, really explaining how, for example, in the upper panel of your computer laptop, there's 5 different cameras, 4 you cannot see. But if you use an ultraviolet blue light, you can sense the infrared cameras that are using facial recognition. They can, via photonic light, affect you, make you ill, use the EMF frequency from your cell phone. Your cell phone, smartphones are weapon systems that are used for biosensing application, but also for bidirectional telemetry. I got rid of mine. I got a track phone that has a removable lithium battery in it, because this phone can track you and attack you even in the off position and with no power on. So it's highly, highly recommendable that you get rid of EMF sources, use Ethernet cables, are aware of your surroundings. For example, I tested things like, the speaker with Bluetooth. I got rid of all of that. I got rid of my car that had GPS. So since then, I've done a lot better, and I highly recommend these measures as well. Targeted individuals were the beta testing for this torture program. The Orwellian vision of the metaverse, AI control over humans, is if you're a dissident and you still have free will, a soul and a spirit, then basically they're going to get rid of you, torture you to death, or even kill you. And if you don't believe this, then look at China, because facial recognition is already being tracked there. The menstrual cycle of women is being tracked, and millions of abortions are being forced sterilization because of this technology and its tracking capabilities. So digital ID, vaccine passport, and social credit scores systems. We have to stand up to that, because the other aspect is this weaponized control system that we just are telling you about. Electronic LiDAR, facial recognition, gait recognition, that, for example, anybody who has got a hip replacement has a biosensor in there that's continuously transmitting your information to the hospitals, and that medical information is being utilized by these systems. Smart tests, we're inhaling via geoengineering, the directed energy weapons we've discussed. So DNA is really the resonant frequency is being accessed of each individual's DNA. It's like your finger thumbprint, and they can target you specifically based on your DNA while no one around you is affected. Dissenters, like all of us, can be remote tortured and eliminated, and I cannot tell you how serious I take this, because I've experienced something like this for speaking out, and many of my colleagues in the freedom movement have also experienced being targeted. And every human being on this planet needs to know about this program and actively resist it. So with this, I want to share, finish my presentation, but I really want to encourage everyone to understand that the C19 shots have the same technology. And on my Substack, I have done meticulous research to show how the chemical composition of, for example, the Morgellons fibers and the smart dust and these brain chips, and now what's in the shots, they're using these hydrogel polymers, plastic polymers that self-assemble. This, what you see behind me, is a biosensor in and itself. And these micro robots are now swimming in the vax and the unvaxxed people. So this is really about our humanity, our soul and spirit, and this is what we're fighting for. Because you need to understand that if your thoughts are modified and you are, for example, being told to do atrocious things or even take your own life, some people are being targeted for remote suicide, and they're being told in their head, they're hearing voices in their head to kill themselves, and then it looks like a suicide, and these suicide rates have been going up. So I am very, very concerned that a lot of what we call mental illness these days is really targeting subliminal messages to lower the vibratory state of humanity, because these Satanists and their handlers in other dimensions, they feed off of this horrific energy of suffering, depression, and torture.